Hi, this is Kyle Higgins, and you're listening to the GeekCast Radio Network.
Reality is a deadly place. I hope this trip is a good one.
Hello, and welcome to the Comic Concierge podcast, a podcast that believes that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. On today's podcast, it's actually a reverse Comic Concierge podcast, as the book we will be talking about was actually brought to my attention by my guest, Matthew Stewart. How's it going, man?
It's going well. A little role reversal in this episode of Comic Concierge.
Yeah. We've been talking about Howard County for a few episodes now, but I think, issue volume 2, you talked about actually picking up Revival, which we'll be talking about today. Mm-hmm. So, and I was curious, what about this, before we get started, what about this book caught your eye? What caused you to actually pick it up and try it?
Well, one, it was an Image comic, and it's as people who have listened to the podcast before, everybody knows my affinity for Image Comics. It's the comic brand that I grew up with. Everybody grew up with Marvel, DC. I was a weird kid, and I grew up reading extremely violent, weird, comic books that were, Spawn and Violator and Boof and Pit and everything else in between. So it kind of gets harkened back to a comic label that I really admired. And I know everybody talks about, Saga. They talk about Walking Dead, of course, all the big kind of AAA titles, if you will, on Image. But this one, for some reason, I don't know, the cover of the first volume kind of got my attention with very stark background, snowy background with somebody holding a big giant scythe, and then reading what it was kind of about, I was like, okay, well, it's kind of a zombie story, but there's something else kind of weird going on between it. There's some, it seems it's a very layered book as well too. There's a lot of characters, which is big for me. But I guess the overall idea of that, these people are coming back to life, but they're coming back to life as regular people. They're not zombies. They're not anything else that's weird. They're just it's a reverse rapture, basically. So everybody who went away, now everybody's back, and it's dealing with in a very small town as well, who are okay, it's got that leftover type vibe to it, where at least in the leftovers, everybody was raptured away. So it's everybody dealing with everybody disappearing in this town. But in this one, it's everybody's back to life, but they're normal, and they're oh, well, hey, how's everybody doing? What did I miss? Type thing. So there's a weird kind of comedy to it that's weird, but as you get more into the book, there's this, I don't know, there's a lot of things going on in the book that I really liked a lot.
Yeah, it was interesting because I went to this honestly knowing really nothing about it. It's interesting because it always pops up in my Comixology Unlimited app as a book I should read, and I'm well, now I definitely have to. And I didn't really know, even the term revival, I didn't really know what it meant. Going into it, I'm oh, that's obvious. How did I not put two together? But yeah,
it was a church revival. Everybody got up and started singing.
Exactly. But it was, it right from the get go. It announced its presence or its premise right away. Where we're in this book and we're reading, and he's talking about okay, well, we're in a morgue. What's going on here? And suddenly, you see this man walk legitimately, try to get out of the burner as he's being burned. In this case, it was to death, but he was actually alive. And then a little girl shows up, and at first I'm is this some sort of hell? What exactly is happening here? Because she almost looks like a ghost. Because she's almost looked like someone from The Shining. She's got that.
Yeah, it looked like the little girls in the hallway a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm oh, this must be a ghost story. But no, it turns out that in this moment in time, people that were dead or recently dead all came back. And at first I didn't realize that it was just isolated to this one specific town. But we learn as we go that, it was just this one location. We get some midway through some conversation through this radio or talk show or something of that nature, where we find out that people don't know what happened or how it happened. They've all been quarantined to think it maybe was some sort of biological thing. But I thought when it comes to just grabbing your attention right away, it did that. And then right after that, we get into just this weird looking horse zebra, which I didn't know was a thing.
I had no idea either. I guess they're big in Wisconsin. Go figure.
Yeah. But to me, it just right away, like from its opening to like seeing this image of this galloping horse, zebra, just coughing up on its own blood. It set its mood, I thought, really effectively within its first few pages.
Yeah. I mean, I love the art style. I mean, I know we talked about how I'm big on the art style and how it looks, and I think the story being told, it fleshes out a lot of characters, but there are a lot of characters. But I also like that what you were talking about, how they think it's a biological thing. So you have like the CDC involved. There's a lot of different layers, like going on in this story, that it's not just your typical run-of-the-mill people coming back to life. There's politics involved, and I think that's what kept me going with this story, where there's some pretty likable characters that they felt very, very human as well too. They're very flawed, they're not perfect, so I like that aspect where it's like there's not just one gleaming example of a good person. It's like even the person who's the protagonist, who is it, Dana? Her name escapes me right now. But as you learn further on in the volume, she's a pretty flawed character, and she has her sister Martha, who is also like rebellious teenager, like she finds her like on a bridge, looking like she's going to jump off the bridge and kill herself too. So there's weird sister dynamics, which I like a lot. And then the father's involved, and it kind of has that Fargo type thing to it, almost like Dana's a little bit like what's her name? Can't think of her name. Her name escapes me from Fargo. Frances McDormand from Fargo a little bit, where it's like this. It's like I'm trying to do the best I can, but I don't really know what's going on. And also, none of these characters, they seem to be like either multi-ethnic or like Native American as well too. So I like the fact that the main character isn't just like your white bread, person who's going to save the day. It's like there's something else going on there too. But I love the gore too. If you want to talk about the gore, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the gore. So that's what I love.
There were some really gruesome moments, like within the opening issue, or we get like this old woman legitimately like pulling out her teeth, and I thought it was a good build up to that moment where it's like, she's out in the cabin, and then you get there, she's knelt over, you see these cats that are chewing on something, you look down and there was just teeth everywhere. And until the moment that it's actually happening, I thought was really rather effective, and it just to kind of like set what's going on. It's like seems like more is here. Obviously, we know people are back from the dead, but something's not right with them.
Yeah, I like that tension, and I think we brought this up with Horror County before, where it's hard to really build a lot of tension in horror comics. It's extremely difficult because you can just go from one panel to the next, but the way that was actually laid out with the teeth and the cats, and then you see the old woman just pulling her teeth out and trying to put her dentures back in, that's pretty unnerving right there. But that the way the book is set up is such an effective like turn where something extremely violent happens as well too. So just that tension being built up with that one scene in the first I could say it's first issue pretty much. I love the way that looked. It was visceral, and then even just the end of the issue itself, that's near the end of the issue, you get a cool little surprise too. Like you're getting more, like after the first issue was over, I was like, okay, I'm in. Like I like where this is like a pilot and a TV show that was really good, that I wanted to keep reading and going forward in the book. So it worked really well for me. And
my one question going into it was like, if you remove death, if like it's like okay, no one can die, like how can your book have tension? Like how can that work? But I think we soon find out that whatever occurred, it was possibly a one-time thing for the individual people, because it's not that people can't die. It's just that those people, for whatever reason, that specific moment are kind of impenetrable, or it seems like that's the case because we see what happens with this first issue. But yeah, I agree. I think it did a good job of just looking at the first issue in the sense of setting up its premise, building up its characters. Even though there was a good amount of characters here, I felt like you got a good sense of them all, and then give you something to hook onto in the sense of its ability to build tension, its ability kind of to build its mystery. I thought it was really effective right from the get-go about letting you know what it's about.
To the story, and it hooks you in, like you said, and it just made me want to keep reading. And of course, further down, because this is what I think 5 issues are in the first volume here. It seems, I think it's issue 1 through 5, and you start getting some new characters put in there. You get the crazy. The the guy who's the demonologist. I can't even explain what his deal is, but he's kind of like on his own little personal crusade to stop these. He thinks they're all like hellish demons or abominations from God. He reminded me a lot, actually, of the Curse from the Spawn comics. I keep going back to Spawn, but this is just the character that he kind of like. If this was a prequel, I could see him as being like, before the Curse became the Curse. This was the guy that we got hanging out in Wisconsin, things like that. But then the other thing too, we keep following this ghost who's kind of going around too, and that's where why I like the book. The whole kind of like specter ghost element for me is a little. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it a little bit. Like I don't quite understand that specific
you actually
character or being's use in the book right now.
Sorry.
I don't know.
And you bring up that character, and you brought up Dr. I think it's Mr. April or Dr. I forget what he's going by. I think it's just Mr. The pseudo exorcist or demonologist or whatever he's calling himself. He was probably the one character I felt like I didn't have a full sense of, or the one, at least in his first volume, I thought was a little bit all over the place. Like, I didn't necessarily, when we first see him, get like this evil type of vibe. He felt like, I don't know, like a cheap version of Hellblazer or Constantine. Like he didn't. That's kind of like in the sense of he's kind of a drunkard. He's scamming people and doing bad things. Yes. But he's not. I never got him to be this have more of a evil motives or be willing to kind of go where he goes by the end of this book or end of this issue. And that was my one. The one thing that didn't work for me as much as the other pieces, where his character by the end felt very different to where he was, and I don't know if that was just my misreading. I mean, he does threaten a young girl, so maybe that's a clue that hey, he's not an ideal citizen. But and again, it could be me projecting, thinking like he's like like a Constantine, where he's a little bit rebellious, but he's got a heart of gold. But by the end, he's clearly evil. And it's funny you mentioned that ghost character, because when I first saw it, I'm like, oh, it's got to do with aliens. I thought at first it was Alien, but
yeah, it looks very alien. Yeah, it does. It's cool, and it's a cool like compare and contrast to like these revival people that look like humans, or they are humans, but then you have this one like ghostly specter who's living in the woods, and eventually find out about this ghost specter, but come the end of the entire volume, you're still getting you have a lot more questions than you have answers. You don't really know how these specters are kind of working in the greater form of the entire story, what their use is, will they stick around? I mean, there's a lot of questions that kind of go, and it worked for me once you kind of understand what like the demonologist guy, the exorcist, is doing with these ghosts, and how they kind of go after specific items that belong to them. So it's like typical ghost story, like unfinished business type stuff. But there's also like a very evil poltergeist type feel to them as well. I don't really know. Still ways to go to figure that whole arc out.
yeah, that's something they'll build on further. And as we're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that when it came to Abel, like once he heard that his music tone or his ringtone was Limp Bizkit, it probably should have been a good sign that he's not to be trusted. But if you're into 90s new metal, like this guy obviously cannot be trusted. He did it all for the nookie. That was one. And there's little things in this book that it's funny, but it's also just so weird how I don't know, because there's extremely coarse language in this as well too, which you would expect from an Image comic anyway to begin with. But then there's like very scuzzy characters, and the Constantine or the Hellblazer or even the Preacher. Like he kind of reminds me of like a little bit of Preacher of Mr. Abel as well too. Kind of all those characters kind of rolled into one. But yeah, I mean, I like the book overall, but there are like little weird things going on in there. But the humor is very gallows humor. Yeah. What I do find really intriguing about this book, though, is that there's a ton of like human drama going on in this. Like, it's one of those stories where you could probably remove the supernatural horror element, and you still have a pretty solid drama there. Like you have a situation where you have a female cop who had a kid when she was younger, trying to prove to her dad that she can be just as good as him. even her sister storyline. Like I thought her character really captivating. She from the reveal of the first issue, saying she was part of the revival, to that relationship she's having with that professor, and like the fact just what she's going through. Like I thought we talking just on a character standpoint, they did do a lot of building, and I do feel like there is. I could see why this goes as far as it does. I was worried, when you have a premise like this, it's like how far can you take it? And it didn't take me long to figure out, okay, what they did smartly was they're building up these characters, so there's a lot of pieces here. And there's a lot going on, I would say, in this first volume. Like, I'd be honest, like I had to make sure I was keeping track of everything, but because they certainly, I think, pack a lot of story, which is, a good thing within this, within these first few issues.
Yeah, I like it a lot, how they did pack a lot in. I mean, it leaves you reeling, thinking about, like, man, there's a lot of stuff to kind of unpack after you kind of read all this. And then the whole story at the end of the day, when you really think about it, is that, who killed Dana's sister? Because apparently, she saw her the other day, or however long ago she saw her, and then she's coming back as, a reviver, or whatever, I would call part of the revival. But it's like, she obviously, either she's powerful and she can't die, or she was killed and then came back to life and now she can't die. So there's something going on, like a murder mystery, where you got to kind of figure out, okay, how did she get these powers? Why did she like being beat up as well too? Because she gets her ass kicked in this book quite a bit, especially at the end and then even in the middle there too. So, but yeah, the family drama aspect, I really like that a lot. I like the soap opera element to it. There's so many things kind of going on, a lot of characters being intertwined and intermingled as well too. But yeah, if you got rid of the whole horror element, there is a really interesting, very cool human drama going on as well too. I want to know more about that. I mean, the other stuff is ancillary.
It also makes you wonder, like, why when it comes to these, revivers, or I forget exactly the terminology they were using, why some of them seem to like come back and just be not there completely. Or there's like an evilness to them, whether it's like the grandmother in the beginning, the reporter's father, and what I assume he ends up doing. But the way this volume ends, I assume, or when she comes and finds her husband, like, with his disemboweled, I assumed that was the father who did it. But she seems fine. Like, she seems like, not fine, but she's not to the level of, psychotic as they are. But they still seem to have some sort of, like, there's something underneath them. Like, you see the one, the older gentleman who was in comatose, just looking at watching television, and there's one specific moment where he's just like, there's like a tear in his eye, and I first thought it was him, whatever he was watching, but I think maybe it was just him realizing his consciousness still isn't there. And then the grandmother, who once she realizes what she did to her daughter, basically tries to kill herself the only way she can in that whatever they incinerator. So there seems to be with some of them something is more afoot. With others, they have it more together. So you make a good point of, like, was she murdered? Did she maybe commit suicide? Because thinking about, like, the fact that the first time she sees her, who's on top of that bridge, did she maybe jump off, and that's where it came from? So there are a lot of pieces here. There's a good mystery within all this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the older characters are the ones that are a little bit more kind of like, ravenous and kind of more murdery, it seems, almost, at least in this volume. But yeah, I mean, I do like that kind of, they go on these like kind of like tears of like, mania, but then they go back and they're like the old woman who's like, oh, Terry, I killed Terry. And it's very heartbreaking for her. She didn't realize what she was doing, So there's I mean, I do like that there is no rhyme or reason yet to how people are affected by this revival. So everybody's kind of reacting. It's almost like a dip in the Lazarus pit, almost, where you kind of like lose a little bit of your consciousness or lose a little bit of your sanity when you are brought back. So, that's the best kind of comparison I can make.
Sure, that's a good point. Yeah, but yeah, I thought as a book that with a book that has a lot going on like this, it could be easy to like kind of get confused and not know what's everything that's going on. And I don't think I got picked up every beat so far, but I think that's somewhat purposeful. Like we see this this mystery that's building, especially how the volume ends where she's looking at a list of names that are highlighted. And I'm like, I don't know who that's in reference to, or the professor at the end is looking at the screen with a poem, and I'm like, I forget what that's in reference to. But like I said, I think when it comes to the broader strokes, I think those are you can pick up really well. And there are like it does a good job of, I think we talked about the drama piece, but there are some, like you mentioned, the gore, some really horrific and action packed, like high tension moments too, like the snowmobile chase. I thought it was a lot of fun, especially how it ends and just her mangled body. I thought that was effective for sure. Even if I thought like the Abel character was a little underdeveloped, but when it came to a pure action standpoint, I thought it was well done.
Yeah, I liked all the different segments. You had good action, you had good family drama, you had good gore, you had good story, you had good build about just like, and again, I like the kind of politics that are going on in there as well too. So there's like a lot of good things going on in this book. It's very busy, but if you can kind of, compartmentalize things and, it's almost like watching like the end of like a season of The Wire at the end or something, where they're unpacking everything at the end of the issue as well too, where you have her looking at the phone numbers and her playing, Sherlock Holmes, or watching Sherlock Holmes, and she's playing detective and stuff like that. So there's a lot of cool little things going on. And, I do like, you brought the mangled body after, the truck hitting, and she's like just laughing about it. It's like things like that. It's like, is she getting off on this thing? I mean, her character I like the best because I don't know. I want to know what happened to her. I want to know why she just enjoys this like pain that's going on, and there's something a lot. It's the most intriguing, the most layered. The two sisters are obviously the two best characters for me. Yeah. Because they're the most well developed so far, but I like the younger sister better because she's like crazier. She's got more stuff going on. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to reading more about this. And
I'm looking to see more about the reporter and seeing her story develop a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of great imagery in this, like her being like crucified on the tow truck and stuff like that. I thought that was it does juggle all that pretty well. But all right, anything else you want to bring up regarding the book before we bring it to a close?
No, I mean, I think it's a book. I'm glad I picked up and took a chance on, because I'm not one for taking chances on just books I have absolutely no idea what they're all about. But it hit me in a certain way where I'm like, I'm intrigued. I want to know what's going on. I know Image is always putting out good quality books in the first place, so I'm not surprised that it's good. But I have 3 other volumes I want to dig into, so there's obviously a very long way for this book to go. So I got plenty of stuff ahead of me. So I mean, I'm looking forward to the ride.
Yeah, and I appreciate you recommending it to me, because it's like I said, it's one that's like been on I need to catch up with, and I'm glad I did. And it's one that definitely have to, similar to Howard County, keep up with, because I am looking forward to it. And if you're someone like me that does have Comixology Unlimited, the first volume is available for free. So it's I think it's definitely worth the read. And I think if you're not, digging with it by the first issue, you kind of, I think it's a good sign maybe to put it down. But if you are, I think it's a solid read. And I think it's too one that doesn't probably get talked about as much as it should, because so much I feel like it's happened since then. But it's quite good. But yeah, and I like Tim Seeley's work for the most part, and I really only read his more Big Two stuff, so it was kind of good to read some of his more.
Because this is from 2012, so it's still going. It's still an ongoing series from what I read. I think going on, so it's got 6 years of issues behind it, which is really nice.
All right, well, Matt, if more people wanted to get in contact with you or listen more from you, or listening to more of your stuff, how could they do that?
Well, if you dare want to listen to our things, you can always go to, of course, simplisticreviews.net. That's the main website with all the links and gadgets to find your, wherever on the internet. But we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. pretty much anywhere on the internet you will find us. Download the podcast, of course, through iTunes or any other place where fine podcasts are found. Leave a review, leave a 1-star review, leave a 5-star review. Tell us what we're doing wrong or right, mostly wrong. But yeah, anywhere on the internet, look for Simplistic Reviews and you will be able to find our stuff.
Yeah, definitely check out their show. I think I might be making a possible guest, I don't say appearance, cameo.
Possibility.
Yeah, but
Ooh.
We'll see. If you wanted to interact more with this show or listen to more episodes, you can do that by going to GeekCast Radio or nerdly.co.uk. You can hit me up on Twitter at Movie Revolt. The show is also on Instagram and Facebook. Just search Concierge Podcast. And like Matt mentioned, if you want to leave us, go to iTunes and leave Simplistic Reviews a review and leave us a review, and we'll give you a hearty high five because that's pretty much all I could do. But you'll have my forever thanks. So there you go.
Yeah, I'll give you a meaty high five.
Exactly. Alrighty, well that'll be it for this week. Remember that comics are for everyone. The key is finding the right one. Until next time, thanks for listening.